Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at the astrology for the week ahead. That is January 20th through the 26th, Monday through Sunday. We're going to take a look at all of the major astrological transits that are coming through. I'm going to give you a sense of what you can expect. And we're going to spend a little extra time today on the Sun-Pluto conjunction in Aquarius, which is taking place early tomorrow. So kind of prep for that today a little bit. I'm going to be saying something about the Sun conjoin Pluto in Aquarius for all the fixed signs who will be especially impacted by this transit. But I will say that at the end after I've gone through everything and I'm spending just a little bit of extra time with the Sun conjunct Pluto, which we'll also be looking at tomorrow. Every week, as I promised last week, I've decided this year that if there's a big transit happening during the week and it's going to hit the angular places for one of the sign families, like a cardinal, fixed, or mutable signs, I might say something about that because it gives a little extra horoscopic dimensionality to the coverage in the week. And I think that what I'm realizing is that as much as I sort of loathe doing horoscopes all the time, I'd much prefer to talk about the archetypal combinations. I think that there's a good bridge to be built for a lot of the audience out there who might their entry point to astrology might be more horoscopic in nature, and then the opportunity to learn more about the depth and nuances of archetypal astrology can take place that way. So I'm trying to be a little bit more inclusive and open-minded about the way I think about horoscopes, and it's a little step for me. Anyway, so that's what we'll do today. Before we get into it, as always, remember to like and subscribe. We are seeing if we can get to 80,000 subscribers on the channel by the spring equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere. It gives us a couple of months to see if we can do that and build our subscriber total. We have a lot of people who listen, apparently, our research shows us, but have not yet subscribed. It's free to do so, and it really does help us grow our channel. So if you click the like and subscribe button, that helps us grow. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. There are a new series of 3 talks that I will be doing over the next 3 months that are now posted on the website. These are my monthly webinars. So if you feel like taking a look at those, you can go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on the events tab, and then go to live events. And you will see that in February, March, and April, we have 3 new talks posted. Venus through the fire in February, unlocking the mysteries and magic of Venus's retrogrades. We have a Venus retrograde coming up in March, so this will also be nice prep for that. In March, I'm looking at the 3rd house, the mysterious temple of the moon, it was called in ancient astrology, the joy of the moon. And then we're going to be looking at essential dignities. I've called this talk Stop Hating Essential Dignities, what they are, why they're real, and what they're used for. And for those of you who may not know a lot about essential dignities, this will really help you understand why we have things like exile and detriment, fall and exaltation, what they are, how they work, what they're used for, why you don't have to be afraid of them, that kind of thing. So some good talks coming up. I hope you'll check those out. You can register, and if you can't attend live, you get the recording of the talks. So on that note, let us now start taking a look at the astrology for this week ahead. 20th through the 26th. I'm going to go through the transits one by one on the real-time clock here. So let me just pull the real-time clock up so we can take a look at it together. Here we go. And we're looking at the start of the week. Monday, nothing perfecting, but tomorrow the Sun will conjoin Pluto in Aquarius. So you can see that conjunction forming today. If I go forward one day, you'll see tomorrow it's perfect. January 21st. That starts off the week. I'll say more about that transit at the very end. After I've gone through all the other transits, we'll sort of circle back around to that. And I'm going to mention which house this is landing in for the fixed signs. A pretty big week for the fixed signs. If you listen to your sun or rising sign horoscope in a fixed sign, this will be big for you. Now, as we go forward in the week after the Sun conjoining Pluto on the 23rd, we have a bunch of little sextiles and trines this week. Mars will sextile. Here we go. Uranus. So we're looking at just a little quick sextile between Mars and Uranus taking place on Thursday, January 23rd. The Mars sextile to Uranus is invigorating, engaging. We have a smooth, harmonious connection between the 2 planets. So you can see little actions that we take that in time lead to gradual breakthroughs. The earth signs and water signs are a little bit more gradual, developmental. They're more organic and a little slower in the way that they express themselves in the feminine signs. But these are very dynamic, active planets. So you get something like the slow chipping away at a process that reaches an important turning point, a little breakthrough that's both emotional and practical, things like that that you'll watch for on January 23rd when these two planets come together, albeit pretty briefly. On the same day, maybe the bigger transit of the week alongside of the Sun-Pluto conjunction is going to be the opposition of Mercury and Mars. The fact that it's happening at the same time that Mars is sextile to Uranus suggests to me that we could be in for a little bit of volatility on the level of mental and emotional communication. I say that because Mercury-Mars oppositions often come up when verbal, mental, intellectual, principled kinds of conflicts arise, where there are disagreements or there is some need to take executive action or make a strong decision or judge something, be very discerning. And sometimes the cutting intellectual, analytical, executive qualities of mind are a little intense with a transit like this. Mars is also retrograde in its fall in Cancer, a sign that's very watery and emotional. The moon will be in Scorpio that day. Feels like it could be a little bit intense. Maybe there's a significant moment of breakthrough with Mars sextile to Uranus, but it comes through the kind of verbal, mental, communicative breakthrough or challenges or tensions that are present with Mercury opposite Mars. So that's Thursday. And the Wednesday-Thursday sequence then leads us sort of with the Mars sextile to Uranus into the Mercury opposite to Mars. So you're going to be feeling that all together. Now, the other thing that's interesting is, of course, on the other side, Mercury is therefore trining Uranus. So you can see how this opposition engaged very positively on either side from Mercury and Mars to Uranus does suggest that whatever tension we're facing with Mercury opposite Mars, the kind of intellectual and analytical qualities of Mercury and Mars, or the verbal, mental, emotional breakdowns that they could imply, or the altercations or disagreements or tensions between Mercury and Mars that we're holding, could be very constructive insofar as both planets are inclined toward Uranus, the god of revolution and breakthroughs, in harmonious ways, trines and sextiles. So that becomes an interesting midweek configuration. Now, if we go forward 2 more days into the weekend, on Saturday, we're going to see that Venus will trine Mars. I like this because Venus, here we go. There's Venus trining Mars. Venus trining Mars from Pisces to Cancer after the separation of Mercury opposite Mars, to me, suggests that the possibility to smooth over rough edges or to bring some level of harmony or emotional healing or resolution into spaces that have been more tense mentally or energetically. Like, if it's been a week where there's been a lot of intense decisions or conflicts of principles or ideas or different ways of thinking about things and different kinds of conversations that have been rather intense, you may find that Venus and Mars trining one another have a way of bringing differences into harmony. Conflicts find a peaceful way of existing together. Differing views find a way of existing together, or conflicts find some form of resolution. Dare we use the word healing, right? Something like that. Now, on the same day, it's also encouraging to me that Mercury, the other side of the Mercury-Mars opposition, finds a little sextile to Neptune. So it is as if all parties are finding a way of compromise, or that what appears initially as a kind of stress or a challenge, that, some form of adversity or an obstacle that has to be leaped over through the opposition of Mercury to Mars, finds peaceful, flowing, harmonious resolutions in the aspects that come later in the week. The Mercury sextiles Neptune, Venus trines Mars. And also, we get Venus sextiling Uranus. So same exact time, this would be on the 26th going into Sunday, the very end of the week. Now Venus is sextiling Uranus. So you can see, like, this week, if we kind of calculate, or not calculate, but we sort of add it up, we've got a Mars sextile to Uranus, a Mercury trine to Uranus, a Venus trine to Mars, a Mercury sextile to Neptune, a Venus sextile to Uranus. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 aspects out of 7 in the week that are all sextiles or trines, which are flowing, harmonious. They tend to bring about cohesion, unity, harmony. Now, the fact that all of that is happening in a week where the two major aspects are a Sun-Pluto conjunction and a Mercury-Mars opposition suggests to me that, yeah, there might be some pretty significant changes of direction or momentum, some pretty meaningful conflicts or tensions that arise during the week. But there's also a lot of supportive, smooth, harmonious planetary aspects that suggest an ability to sort of roll with the punches. Now, we won't be looking at every single one of these aspects this week. Let's talk a little bit about how I'm going to be focusing my attention. Tomorrow, we're going to be looking at the Sun conjoined Pluto in Aquarius once again. And then we're going to be spending some meaningful time with Mercury opposite Mars. And then we'll probably roll into the weekend, looking at some of the weekend harmonious aspects together. I might sneak a Planets in Profile episode in. I'm about to start catching up with the Moon in Profile. I can't remember where we're at. We might be at Virgo or Libra or something like that. So we will be moving on with the Moon in Profile series shortly. I've also been writing a Grabbed episode. So some fun storytelling episodes, catching up with some other series. Ari should be coming back this week or next. So you'll see him in the queue pretty soon for the finale of our series on ancient versus modern views on the nodes of the moon. We'll be looking at Ram Dass's birth chart from the perspective of evolutionary techniques and Hellenistic techniques sort of side by side. So that ought to be really fun too. Okay, well, as promised, Sun conjoining Pluto in Aquarius to round out our talk for the day. Let's take a look at the chart on the screen again. Let's back this up to the start of the week here, Monday. So you're going to be feeling this today into tomorrow. We're going to be talking about this in depth tomorrow, so I'll say a few things now. But when the Sun conjoins Pluto, one of the things that can happen is even on a small level, this can be really significant. The Sun often correlates with an ongoing and evolutionary sense of our purpose in life. And purpose can be plural. It doesn't sometimes mean, what's my purpose? As though we have one. Our purposes change week by week, month by month, year by year, season by season of our life. We have a sense of purpose that changes and evolves, and many senses of purpose that exist within many little worlds and many areas of life. And so it becomes crucial to look at the whole sign house of Aquarius in your chart when you're tracking a transit like this. Fixed signs will be getting it in a big way. I'll say more about that in a second. But a contact between Pluto and the Sun, especially when Pluto's just ingressed into Aquarius, can really signify the major shift of direction, a turning of momentum that's starting to take place in the whole sign house of Aquarius in your chart. And I say that because this is really the first time that the Sun has conjoined Pluto in this house, where Pluto is now there to stay. And so this conjunction can really signify one of the first and most important moments of decisive transformation, the transformation of direction, of purpose, that the Sun encounters when it contacts Pluto is a death and a rebirth. My favorite set of words in the whole world. And so the death and rebirth of purpose as it exists within a particular sphere of life, the transformation of power, intention, ambition, the kinds of resources we have available to us to meet our goals and achieve our desires, the explorations of power and the shadows of power, a changing sense of what gives us meaning or grants our life, a heroic sense of purpose, all of which can start going through significant, although not for all of us, like, it depends on the birth chart, right? But for even people who don't have major planets sitting around the early degrees of fixed signs, this can be a moment of one of the first decisive moments of ongoing change that the Pluto ingress into that new house of Aquarius in your chart will represent. So more on that tomorrow. But the Pluto Sun is probably the biggest transit of the week, along with the Mercury opposite Mars. They're the most intense aspects. Again, thankfully, we have a lot of supportive trines and sextiles all around the Mercury-Mars aspect later in the week. Let's talk just really briefly. I want to show you what happens when we take out everything but the Sun and Pluto. I'm going to just show you why this is a big deal for the fixed signs. So if you're a Taurus rising, you're a fixed sign, the Pluto-Sun conjunction will reflect the angular dynamism of Pluto having just entered your career house. And the ongoing changes there with respect to the direction of your career, you may really start to notice right now. So for Taurus risings, this becomes a very significant transit this week. For Leo risings, it's in your 7th house of love and relationships. Pluto has a long journey that has just begun within the house of love and relationships, and the Sun conjoining Pluto there can sort of start to announce that, yes, indeed, there are long, deep changes that are starting to take place here. And they may be subtle at first. Sometimes we don't necessarily see or feel these things right away, but knowing what we know about astrology, we can sort of take note of what's happening around us at this time. If we go to Scorpio rising, we see that the Sun-Pluto dynamic is entering the 4th house. The Pluto entrance into the 4th house suggests major transformation on the level of home, family, roots, parents, and maybe even your living environment or property. The Sun-Pluto conjunction there this week is big for Scorpios because we're looking at a first grand moment of announced change and transformation that the Sun conjoining Pluto can start making us aware of. Now I see more clearly, or now there's a sort of luminescent, a light that's being shown on the transformative process that's starting to take place in that area. These are big for the angular houses, which is why we're doing fixed signs on this one. Now, if you're an Aquarius rising, obviously Pluto's entered your 1st, where it has this dramatic impact on things like identity, physical health, appearance, characteristics of your personality or behavior, and self-reflection and the process of individuation reflected by Pluto's long journey through your 1st house that's just begun. You may be starting to see some of the manifestations of that. So again, every week it's going to be a little different, and I will try to, one of my goals this year is to include a little bit more horoscopic work, which I've trended toward in the past year, again, as a way of trying to build meaningful bridges for people who maybe come into astrology far more interested in horoscopes than the in-depth archetypal, philosophical, ancient kinds of stuff that I love to teach and work with. So I'm trying to kind of be a little bit more of a bridge builder this year in that respect, and grow the audience that way as well, right? But one of the ways that I'm doing that is, at the overview of the week, when there's a major transit or two that are just really dynamic, I might just touch on what houses that's hitting for when it enters the angles. Those tend to be the loudest. So I'll usually focus on Mondays on anyone that's getting an angular transit. I easily could have looked at the Mercury opposite Mars today through horoscopes, but I decided that I'm probably going to be doing some flash horoscopes for all 12 signs with Mercury opposite Mars, since it's a big one within the Mars retrograde cycle. So I'll probably look at Mercury opposite Mars and horoscopes for all 12 signs. So that's the plan right now anyway. So that's why I didn't include it here. So usually what you'll find, that goal this year is, even if you're not mentioned in the horoscopes on Monday with one of the big transits of the week, that at least once a week, I will try to include some horoscopes for like quick horoscopes for where the topics are being activated by houses for all 12 signs if there's any major transits. So we'll have a little bit more horoscopic content this year in that way. But every week will be different too. If there's weeks where it feels like I'm going to be dying inside if I do any more horoscopes, I may not, right? So my goal is to kind of, you'll always have your monthly overviews, you'll always have your monthly horoscopes, and then there'll be a sprinkling of a little bit more horoscopic activity and nuances being sprinkled in here and there. And if you're like me and you don't love horoscopes, because I don't, I'm just being honest, just think to yourself, the idea is to build meaningful bridges, because what I know is that many people on the level of popular astrology find their way into some of the deeper archetypal content and delineations through an initial interest in horoscopes. And so what I really received during the last 40 days of the year, during Kickstarter time, I go into reflective mode, a lot of prayer and reflection on where I want to take the channel. And what I really observed in myself during this time was my resistance to horoscopes. And why do I have that resistance? What is it that I really don't like about them? Well, what I don't like is that they're so general, and they often don't take into consideration all the nuances of an individual birth chart. And they also don't usually contain the depth that I feel is present in archetypal delineations and archetypal breakdowns. Like I would rather spend time looking at the different ways in which Mercury and Mars can manifest than being like, it'll hit you here, Taurus, or, whatever. But I also recognize that, for many people, the development of your interest in astrology is dependent upon also feeling like the things that are most interesting to you are being taken into account. So that's a piece of growth for me this year. And if you're on the same page with me, then maybe you'll be growing along with me if you get irritated with horoscopes. But anyway, so that is where I will leave it for today. Remember to like and subscribe, by the way. We're seeing if we can grow the channel to 80,000 subscribers, which is setting little incremental goals for ourselves this year. That's another thing you'll be seeing me do. And we'll see how we do. But anyway, that's it for today. So we'll be back tomorrow to look at the Sun-Pluto conjunction in depth. All right, bye.